Hey everyone, what's up? This is Uri for Gorilla Poker. We have a really crazy hand today. Heads up 100-200 between LLinusLLove and C-Llama. And you guys might see LLinusLLove called Born to Tilt, which is also the name of a high stakes player on PokerStars. But sometimes, people change their name between sites, and sometimes they like to take the name of another well-known player to throw their opponents off or just for giggles. So yeah, this is LLinusLLove, Born to Tilt on ACR, so don't confuse things, guys. I know people in the comments are sometimes uncertain about it. So yeah, let's get going. Blinds are 100-200. C-Llama raises to 2.5x, very standard size. Linus 3 bets, roughly 4x, again very standard size, well within the range of what's good. And if you just always 3-bet 4x out of position, you'll be doing fine, generally speaking. C-Llama 4 bets. Now note the size of the 4 bet. The size of the 4 bet is like 2.1x. This has a lot to do with stack depth. So if these players would be very short, C-Llama would only have 4 bet all in as an option. Anything else would be pot committing. And when you're 100 big blinds deep and you're in position, the kind of inflection points for 4 bets is between 2 and 2.5x size. So here it would be kind of between 4 and 5k. Anything bigger is a bit too big and would put Linus in a spot where he doesn't really have an incentive to have much of a calling range, and he plays shove or fold. And that's kind of an indication when you do that your sizing is not correct. You want to size in a way that incentivizes your opponents to have calls. It's kind of a theory principle in poker, especially pre-flop, not that he can just go 3-bet or fold. So if we were 200 deep or 300 deep, 4 bets would get a lot bigger. But yeah, this is a size roughly speaking for 100. And yeah, Linus calls, and we get an ace, deuce, 8 rainbow flop. Brickiest of the bricks, ace, deuce, 8 rainbow, ace, deuce, 7 rainbow. When I coach people about theory, these are sometimes the first boards I look at because they're such an example of the driest possible nothing going on board. Linus, of course, checks, and on this board a lot of guys would autopilot and just bet their full range for something small, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. But Llama decides to check back. It's important to think about what does this mean and why would he do this? And I think kind of the dynamic on ace-high boards, which I've discussed in the past in 4-bet pots, is that the 4-better has, sure, he has ace-king and he has lots of ace-x bluffs, but he also has kings, queens, jacks, 10s, and these are hands that want to keep the pot fairly small and want to get to showdown. So you have this dynamic that develops where the in-position player tries to protect, to get to showdown cheap with his pocket pairs, and the out-of-position player tries to pressure them with bluffs and top pairs. And when it's top pair versus top pair in a 4-bet pot at this SPR, money just tends to go in. It favors the 4-better, generally speaking, but a lot of what's going on is centered around those pocket pairs. So when C-Llama checks back, the range that we would imagine he has is, first of all, heavily weighted kings, queens, jacks, 10s, and pocket aces. I think if you're going to slow play something, it's going to be that. And then he's going to have some mix of air and some mix of top pairs in that range. But the center weight is going to be pocket pairs, so 10s through aces. And in this sense, king is a big game changer because now pocket kings hit. So one of your hands that were trying to show down cheap is now the nuts. Linus checks again, and C-Llama decides to go for a quarter pot bet. Kind of a weird bet size for me to see. I feel like this is not appropriate for the way the ranges are set up because, like we said, if you have queens, jacks, 10s, this is too big. If you have your slow plays, this is too small. So it's, to me, this is kind of a what are you doing bet, like you're not seeing your range properly. Interesting to see that. Now, very high level, but 4-bet pots are very difficult to grasp. The ranges are very different. The stack to pot ratios are very different. And of course, I'm probably wrong, guys. So yeah, we have a quarter pot bet, and Linus goes for small check raise. This is already kind of going off the rails in terms of craziness of the hand. But what's going on from a big picture perspective? Linus should be playing lots of check raises on the flop to pressure the pocket pairs. After a check back, he should be playing lots of leads to pressure the pocket pairs, but also lots of check raises. You can't give up on the check raise pressure, because then you let your opponent get a cheap showdown, and we really want to prevent him from doing that. And he still has queens and jacks and tens, so Linus is playing very accurately, and I think a lot of players would miss this and not have check raises here. But one of Linus's big strengths is that he's very aware of where he is on the game tree, and he keeps his range in the way it's supposed to be, with the traps and check raise bluffs and check raise for value. And it's not an easy thing to do. A lot of guys miss this. But part of the greatness of Linus is these things. So yeah, C-Llama calls, and big picture, those pocket pairs should be mixing, and all his traps should be calling. You could say maybe the king changes it so queens through tens don't mean anything, and this is more about king X. Just a thought that occurred to me. And then Linus is pressuring king X, and he's quarter potting king X to check back. But the same idea, even if the weight center shifted there, which I'm not sure it did. And yeah, we get the deuce of diamonds river. So what does a deuce of diamonds river change? Well, if we're talking about ace X versus king X versus pocket pairs, it changed absolutely nothing. Everything is exactly the same. If we're talking about ace X versus ace X, then kicker stopped playing. So if the ranges were both very ace X heavy, you might want to start sizing down as the out of position player, and this is what Linus does. He goes for a quarter pot bet, because now his ace queen is chopping with his opponent's ace 5. So he wants to make sure his opponent has to call wider than ace X. And whether this size is appropriate or you want to go for the shove depends on the exact composition of the ranges, and this is a spot where computers are much better than humans at estimating. I can give you guys the concept of why is Linus betting small, but I can't tell you, is this correct or not without consulting a solver. So C-Llama makes the call, and we have a showdown. C-Llama has queen of clubs, 3 of clubs, so 4 bet is fine, flop check back probably fine. Turn, like I said, the size feels weird to me, but definitely bet call, and then calling the river looks crazy at first glance. Now, like I said, I can tell you guys the concept, and the concept is ace king deuce deuce, queen high. This is the not high card hand, so it's similar to ace high, to calling down with ace high on some boards, and this should beat, in this instance, maybe all of Linus's bluffs. And if it beats all of his bluffs, it's a legitimate bluff catcher, and maybe you think he'll give up busted clubs, and then it's, the flush draw, and then it's even a good bluff catcher. That's probably what's going on in C-Llama's mind. But I have a feeling this might be a bit too crazy. The indifference points here are around queens, jacks, and tens. Those are the centers of your range. I wouldn't be shocked if if Linus is sometimes bluffing some low pairs here. I would not be shocked if he is bluffing some queen highs, and I have a feeling, and again I'm probably wrong, but that C-Llama is taking this way too far. And that, versus a quarter pot bet, you need to defend 80% of your range. But you need to defend 80% of your range that beats a bluff, and that's the main question, because this isn't the top 80% of his range probably. But does it beat bluffs? I'm not sure. So yeah, it looks crazy, right? But it all makes sense if you think about the concepts. And Linus shows ace jack of clubs, so Linus's play makes perfect sense, and I'm not sure about the river size down, but other than that, just very well played. Pre-flop, flop, turn check raise is phenomenal. Most guys would miss having that in their arsenal. And river, I don't know if the bet size is correct, but just the fact that he recognizes the situation is, like always for Linus, impressive. Okay, let's load up a solver. So we have ace 8 deuce rainbow. After a check, we can see that I don't have tiny bet sizes like a 10%, but without that, it's far from a range bet board. And the in position check back range is every pocket aces, every pocket kings, most pocket queens, most pocket tens. some jacks and nines, and then bluffs mixed in, and some ace x are trapping. So this is kind of the shape I was mentioning, where, you know, at first glance everything seems mixed, but there are certain hands like aces, kings, and queens which clearly go into one range more than the other, and similarly for ace king and ace queen. So far so good, makes sense. We go check check, we put out the king of clubs. Like I said, king is a really bad card when you check back every pocket kings. If we hit Control H, we can see how bad. And yes, we can do this. It's tough to see, but the king is the highest EV card on the turn for the in-position player. In terms of equities, no, but in terms of EV, yes. And when we click on strategy, on a turn ace or king, there is basically no betting for out of position, whereas on lower cards there is a decent bit of betting, and this is probably due to this shift with kings or other high pocket pairs. So we have a check, and here you guys can see the solver never quarter pots, and this is kind of what I was saying, because quarter pot doesn't fit any of your hands. Your traps want to go bigger, and tens through queens go smaller, so this quarter pot size doesn't make sense. So what do we do here? We rerun the tree with a quarter pot size, because that's what was used, and that's what we want to be looking at. So we'll create a subtree configuration. We will put only 25% for in position here, and yeah, leave out of position the same. And yeah, with only quarter pot option for in position, Linus should bet even less. But yeah, we have a check, and now with this the only size usable, you do use it. It is good enough for queens, but that's not enough reason to use it. And of course, queen three of clubs can bet the size. So we go quarter pot, and Linus goes for the check raise with ace jack of clubs, a 100% solver approved frequency play. And like I was saying, he should do this with some other ace x, even though it looks like the king is so bad, it's not super duper common. But yeah, he can do this with other ace x, and he can also bluff with an 8, and this is a bit what I was worried about. But yeah, goes for the small check raise. Of course, queen three of clubs gonna call. We get something like the deuce of diamonds river, I think. And here Linus has the option to shove or go smaller, and again Linus nails it with solver going only smaller, because like we said, were you to shove, your opponent barely calls you with worse than an ace. He doesn't need to. Whereas when you go smaller, he does need to call you even with some queen highs, guys. So Linus nailed it again, perfect sizing, and just wins more money by doing this, like plain and simple. A hand like ace jack, you know, betting this size compared to all in should win half a big blind or more in theory, and probably in practice. And it's just, you know, it makes sense if you're aware enough of the ranges. So very well played by Linus. And how should your opponent respond? Well, king's ace is ace king, even ace x he can shove. Ace x here would be his bluffs in a way. Why bluffs? Because he's bluffing you off of the chop, right? You hardly ever fold, but when you fold, you concede half the pot to these hands, and when you call, he doesn't risk anything, because you're capped at ace x, because kickers don't play. So kind of nice bluff to bluff with these hands, very cool concept. And yeah, in position, in this instance, needs to call a bit wider. We can see that calling queen jack offsuit happens, and queen 10 and jack 10 maybe happen, and jacks can happen. 10s can happen, 9s can happen, all these pairs that we were talking about. Even though, like I said, the quarter pot turn kind of shifts the center of the range from where it's supposed to be for the solver, because those hands can't bet that size on the turn. And then a hand like queen three of clubs specifically shouldn't call, but the EV's fairly close and the hand type is correct. So as crazy as it seems, guys, this was a very minor inaccuracy in terms of calling down the queen 3. It was perfectly played by Linus, no surprise, and I think a big inaccuracy with the turn size and the turn thought process that led to the size kind of implies that Sea Llama was not aware of what ranges look like. In this spot he had some different assumption than the solver. Maybe an exploitative one, we don't know, but I don't think it's good to generally exploit Linus having weak checking ranges. I don't think he has a propensity to do that. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the hand. Crazy wild hand. It's crazy to see how these super weird things actually all make sense and are kind of solver approved. Even the Queen 3 of clubs call down to me is solver approved. When I see Queen Jack call, that's, you know, close enough. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.